Author and intimacy expert Laura M. Brotherson, host of the Marital Intimacy Show, educates and inspires women to create a mutually fulfilling, intimate, and passionate marital relationship, emotionally, spiritually, and sexually.
Hi there. Welcome to the Marital Intimacy Show. My name is Laura Brotherson. Thanks for tuning in today. Well, we get to talk about marriage and intimacy and such today, some of my favorite subjects. The topic of this show is Jumpstarting Your Marriage. Well, since I've had to cut back on doing phone consultations while I'm in graduate school, and since I hate being so behind in responding to the many email questions I get, I thought I would take advantage of the opportunity to respond to some of your emails through these podcasts. Unfortunately, it's hard to respond personally to everyone, so I hope by doing this, I will be able to share some thoughts on some common challenges in a way that will be helpful to more than just the one who wrote the email. I guess this might be like listening in on a consultation, though these will be one-directional, of course. And of course, I will change names and specifics to keep the interaction anonymous. So, let's get started. Here is an email from a husband we'll call Tom. Dear Laura, it seems odd to be asking you such personal questions, but I hope you might have some ideas for me. My wife and I have been married 14 years and we have 3 children. I'm not even sure when or how, but over the years I feel like our relationship has been neglected, and we are now to the point where I feel like we are more like roommates or friends that live in the same house than married partners. My wife and I are courteous and polite with each other, but I just don't feel as close as we did early in our marriage. We don't discuss feelings or dreams or goals. Our interaction is mainly about our children, current issues, and mundane things like what to eat, etc. I don't recall ever discussing our relationship and how it can be improved. I believe that our marriage has gotten to where it is in part because we tend to avoid any type of confrontation or conflict. I'm not suggesting that all conflict is healthy, but by avoiding conflict, we seem to have lost touch with one another, and it seems very difficult now for us to engage in anything beyond superficial discussions. I would like our marriage to be more like it was when we were really close and could talk freely about anything that was on our mind. It's sad to say, but I don't know where to begin. The most simple things seem impossible. I don't want to imply that I'm miserable because we probably have a pretty average marriage. I just feel that our relationship needs to be much better, and I'm not sure where or how to begin. On a more personal level, I am especially feeling that our intimate relationship is lacking. But I feel guilty initiating sex in any way because I feel like I am desiring something more for myself and not necessarily for her, although I do try to focus on her needs when intimacy occurs. Is it selfish to want intimacy even though my spouse might not be interested? We rarely, if ever, discuss these types of things, and I hope that this too will change someday. I really try not to be selfish, but to me it seems as though my wife's needs, which are mainly social in nature, are generally met external to our relationship through her friends, activities, etc. My needs, however, seem to be more for intimacy within our marriage, and I feel as though these needs often go unmet because they require involvement from my spouse, whose needs are often met elsewhere. I know you talk about focusing on our own attitudes and behavior, but I am a little confused, because it seems to me that marriage should be something that both partners think about, discuss, and actively work toward making the relationship thrive and grow. For example, I can't imagine a couple excelling at dancing together if only one partner is making an effort and the other partner doesn't see the need to learn or practice. Somehow we need to get back on track of both thinking about our marriage, wanting to be together, desiring to improve communication and intimacy, etc. I guess we need to go back to the basics of building our relationship. It is an extremely lonely and frustrating feeling to feel very much off course and powerless to do anything about it. Maybe that's a slight exaggeration, but it's pretty accurate of how I feel and have felt for a very long time. So I feel like I have to begin some kind of dialogue with my wife to try to get headed in the right direction again. I don't think it is healthy to continue avoiding the difficult discussions. I'd love to discuss, for example, ideas of how we can create rituals or be more intentional in our marriage. I don't even know how to approach her about this, though. I think that I'm partly afraid of upsetting her, plus I've never been able to express myself well, especially when it comes to things like this. If you could give me a few ideas on how to help me open up, or how to approach my wife regarding ways to improve our communication and relationship, I would really appreciate it. And thank you again for staying in touch with me. There are times when I feel like giving up, but your encouragement continues to give me hope. Thank you, Tom. Well, Tom, and anyone else out there who might be having similar struggles, first, I appreciate your interest in making your marriage all it can be. My heart goes out to you and all those who are wanting something more in their marriages. I hope I can share some things here that may be helpful to you. What you describe in your marriage is unfortunately too common for many couples. You are experiencing what I would call a parallel marriage, where you are going through the motions of marriage, but you have let yourselves drift apart. Some may think it's just time to move on, but I believe this is a crossroads for you to change the course of your marriage. Nearly all couples find themselves in a state of parallel living from time to time, especially when you consider that marriage requires a constant stream of time and attention. I'm glad to hear you and your wife are still treating each other kindly, as that is much easier than if anger and resentment has begun to tear away at your hearts as well. It can be a real challenge for couples when one spouse awakens to a vision of something more in their marriage, while the other is either unaware of the need for change or has lost any hope that things will or can ever be better. This can be particularly painful when it involves a desire for improvement in the area of sexual intimacy. When it comes to thinking about each other's needs in marriage, there is often a disconnect among couples. I have found that many couples are not really aware of what each other wants and needs. We think we know what our spouse wants or needs to feel loved, but we often are mistaken. We tend to see each other's needs through our own lenses, which can cause real distortion when it comes to the intimacy needs of a husband and a wife. It's true that women's primary needs for love tend to revolve around emotional connection, whereas men's needs for love often revolve around physical or sexual connection. One of the first things couples can do to get on track to a more fulfilling marriage is to ask each other what specifically makes them feel loved and to strive to do these things each day. I often give homework for a husband and wife to just sit down together or separately and make a list of the top 10 things that make them feel loved and cherished. I consider this to be creating a list of the keys to your loved one's heart. You know, it reminds me of the story of a couple who, after 30 years of marriage, found themselves on the brink of divorce, sitting in a therapist's office. They discussed this concept of love languages, or what makes each of them feel loved, and the husband had just learned that the key to his wife's heart was for him to spend quality time with her, sharing thoughts and feelings, and giving her some of his undivided attention. For 30 years, he had instead been making dinner, doing the dishes, and other such acts of service for her, thinking that's how you show love. While to her that was nice, it was not the things that especially made her feel loved. With great despair, he lamented that he wished he had known 30 years ago that his wife needed these things to feel loved, as he said he would have done those things instead. What a sad waste to me. So my encouragement for all couples is to create this list of what makes each of you feel loved. I even suggest rating each item on a scale of 1 to 10 to indicate how important that particular item is. So, some examples of what you might put on your list could be things like, I feel loved when you kiss me goodbye each day. I feel loved when you hold my hand when we are walking together. I feel loved when you make dinner. I feel loved when you take responsibility for paying the bills. I feel loved when you think of me when you're away and buy me little gifts. I feel loved when you remember comments I make about things that I'd like to have and get them for me sometimes. I feel loved when you are able to surprise me with something. I feel loved when you tell me how much you appreciate me. I feel loved when you tell me that you love me. I feel loved when you look at me approvingly, instead of like you are unhappy or disappointed in me. I feel loved when you help the children with their homework. I feel loved when you are sexually intimate with me. I feel loved when you take the time to ask me how I'm doing. So, with this list, you are trying to make it as easy as possible for each of you to be successful at loving the other meaningfully. This list can be a great gift to each other. And even if your spouse is not interested in this for now, you can still ask her to make you a list so that you can be a better husband to her. You know, it's hard to resist a genuine desire to be a better spouse by learning how you can love them better than you have in the past. You know, it reminds me of a friend who told me that her husband would often ask her, "What's one thing that I could do for you that would make you feel more loved?" That's great. So to answer your question, it isn't necessarily selfish to want to have your needs met, but the problem is that if your spouse already feels that her needs are not being met, or if she is truly unaware of your specific needs, then it may simply be that it is not a high priority for them in the bustle of their everyday lives. It's possible that some of your wife's needs are being met through other means, but keep in mind that there is no other relationship that can fully meet the needs that a spouse can. Friends and other social interactions may be valuable, but they can never fully replace the all-encompassing intimacy of a husband and wife. It is possible that your wife has not yet awakened to her own needs for sexual intimacy, or she may even have some significant reservations about that dimension of marriage. One of the more common situations I encounter in my work as an intimacy educator is where the husband desires greater physical intimacy, and the wife is reticent of such intimacies. A couple thoughts along these lines are that it is sometimes necessary for husbands to very clearly and compassionately be sure that a wife understands these needs. I am well aware of many women who simply believe that they are alone in having a husband that seems to be a sex maniac. A lot of women simply do not understand the unique wiring of men and how important sexual connection is for them. And for that matter, a lot of men also think that they are the only husbands who are wandering in the marital desert of a sexless marriage. Unfortunately, neither the husband or wife is alone. So let's break here, and we'll continue with this Q&A discussion in part 2 of Jumpstarting Your Marriage. This has been episode number 3, Jumpstarting Your Marriage, part 1. But don't miss the rest of the story in episode number 4.